Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today's going to be a layout work video, and it's one that I've been putting off for a long time, and I talked about it in my live stream that I just did the other day. We are going to be going underneath the layout today to fix this ugly control system. So the control system, rather, we're going to keep pretty much the same, but we're going to fix all the wiring. That's an absolute utter disaster in the back. So I'm having DCS signal issues, so we have to figure that out. So what I've already done is I've cut some plywood. We're gonna be mounting the TIU and legacy base on the plywood. We're gonna make these wires look a lot nicer and begin cleaning this all up before I finish the roundhouse and rewire all the whisker tracks, because it's a rat's nest. It's a disaster. So let's dive in and look at it, and I'll talk about my plan, and we're gonna get to work. So if we pan over here behind this panel, it's a disaster. So I've got my ZW, which powers my layout. Both handles are used. I've got a brick here, a Z1000 brick, which powers the TIU. I've got my legacy base. I've got my MTH Wi-Fi module, and I've got the TIU, and it's a disaster. Look at that. It's embarrassing that back here. So what we're going to do is take all of these things, except for the transformer, and we're going to mount the mountable things on the plywood, run the wires behind there nice and clean, and then bring them up to the transformer. My long-term goal here is to get that transformer on a drawer that I can mount on this and be able to pull it out. And so it would hang pretty low, but you would be able to run conventional if you wanted to. Because right now you can't even get to the transformer because it's way back there. So what we're going to do is begin unhooking some things. We're going to mount them. We'll drill some holes, get those wires run nice and neat. That's what we need to do, because this is an utter disaster. If we pan over here to the panel for the turntable, this was obviously all done before I ripped all the whisker tracks out. If we look behind here, again, it's a disaster because each of these switches powers a track. So I can't just run one power bus wire. You know, each of these needs to run individual wire to an individual whisker track. So it's a nightmare. And you can see all those red wires, but there's no organization. So I've torn all those down because I'm working on redoing that turntable or those whisker tracks. So all these, for the most part, have been torn down below the table. So we're going to collect them. I've actually labeled them. There's some blue tape you might be able to see here and there. We're going to pull them all down, and we're going to make them nice and neat and organized to where they run to each track as well. Now, I don't need to do that right away, but we're going to begin that organization process through this video. All right, so I feel like an auto mechanic underneath this thing. So the first thing I'm going to do before I start really getting into too much here, you know, I've got all these wires that are coming off of the turntable area, and a lot of these feed up into this guy up here and then kind of double back down. So I gotta kind of figure that out. So I gotta rerun these. But what I'm gonna do is take a zip tie, and I'm gonna zip tie these up and out of the way. Because when I stick my head up, I'm sticking it right into these wires, and it is a pain in the butt. So what I'm gonna do is just take this zip tie. I'm gonna try to bundle these wires as best as I can. I can always come back and I can cut this later. But what this is gonna do, it's gonna allow me to get these up and out of the way. So I've got a bunch of zip ties that we're gonna be using today as we work on this project. And what I use a lot of these cable tie things that you just nail in. I'm actually gonna use that to really get these up and out of the way. There we go. So that kind of pulls those away from where we're going to be working at. And then spin the camera around here. So in here, if I can get a view, I'm working with two tripods underneath this, so I apologize. There's our TIU. So that's the first thing that we're going to be disconnecting here. We're going to bring that down and mount that on the plywood. So what I've got in here, this is right now, it's running 2 fixed loops. So we're just going to unscrew those. I don't want to lose them. So we're going to keep them close by. All right. And then that's the out. And the in is back here. So we'll pull those off. These are all off. And now what I can do is pull the TIU down. I've got a couple wires connecting here, so I'm going to unplug that and unplug the power. There we go. TIU is loose. So we're going to pull these wires down and around, and then we'll look at where we want to mount this on the plywood. So before I undo these, this is the Z1000. I have accessory power wires hardwired into this, so I'm labeling these before I unplug them so I remember where they go back to. So these are labeled to Z1000, the ground and this power. All right, so at this point we've got legacy base undone. Again, I labeled the wire that I had that ran to this. It's just a ground wire, so not that big of a deal. My goal is to get these mounted on here nice and neat. Same with this. And then what I want to be able to do is run nice neat wires wherever we need them to go, and that'll help begin to clean up some of this mess. And then when we have signal issues like I'm currently having, it's going to be a lot easier to track down or trace where they're coming from. So let's talk about what we have to mount, or where my head is at this moment, and that might change in a minute and a half down this video. So we need to mount the TIU. We're going to mount the legacy base. I have a Z1000 brick. Now this thing's pretty heavy. We can't really mount this because there's no way to mount it. There's also heat sinks and things like that, but I don't want it sitting on the carpet. So my thought is I can build another platform for it to hold it here on the plywood and just screw that into the plywood base here. So that's my thought. We have the Wi-Fi module that's going to get mounted down here also. So let's bring that around, and we've got a whole bunch of other wires dangling in the back. Now, this layout gets plugged into the wall, but to do that, I'm not right against an outlet. So I do have an extension cord, and because I have all these other accessories, we do have a surge protector. That could also be part of my signaling issues, is the fact that the surge protector isn't a good enough surge protector to keep a consistent ground. Ideally, you'd have this plugged directly into a grounded outlet. I'm using a surge protector that's currently hanging down right now. And when I want to turn my layout on and off, I flick this switch and it powers everything up at one time. Ideally, I would like to wire that into an actual switch that we would mount here and switch on and off, and this stuff would all be hidden in the back. But for now, we're probably also going to have to mount this surge protector here for the time being, so we can access that on and off switch. I could also put it directly behind this corner, so I just know I have to reach back here and flip on and off. The issue when you do things hidden like that is if you have people coming over your layout, like if you watch this channel, you know that I have my buddies come over quite a bit, and I have other people that come over, neighbors and things like that, is if the master on-off switch is hidden and there's an issue and you like gotta kill power, no one else knows where that's hidden at. So that's why I would like a big switch on-off here that is then powered through the surge protectors hidden in the back, and it's just easy. Hit the switch. You could even do a big kill button if you really wanted to. So for now, we'll figure out where exactly I want to mount that, but this is going to clean this look up a lot more. What I also want to do is when these are mounted, I would like to have these wires either run nice and neat along this wood or have a hole and have it go to the back side. And then what I can do is literally just take my Sharpie that I have, and I could just write on the back of the plywood what the wire is from and where it's going to. And then it'll be nice and neat up to where they need to go. So odds are I'm gonna run them along the back. So all you see here is these things mounted nice and neat and very little wiring. That's my plan. So before we do wire or mount these pieces, let me talk about a couple things. One, the TIU itself, this one is an older one. There's no USB port. The newer ones have a USB port on them. This one does not have any like keyhole mounts on it. If we look at something like the legacy base, you'll see the keyhole mounts there. So we can put a screw in, slide it in, and it kind of catches it and holds it in place. We can't do that with the TIU. So what we're going to end up doing is placing it on here. I'm going to mark 2 spots here and then another 2 spots down below. We'll screw some holes, and then we're going to actually zip tie it in place. It's just kind of the way that it's going to have to work for now. So my thought is we're going to do legacy base here. we'll do the TIU here. Actually, we're gonna do the TIU right in the middle. And then we've got our Z1000 that I can mount either in the front or in the back. And then we've got the Wi-Fi module. We'll put the Wi-Fi module right there as well. And these things can always be moved around later on. It's not that big of a deal if we unscrew it and move it, and there you can see the holes in the plywood. It's gonna look a lot nicer than it did. So either way, it's an upgrade. Now, if you're mounting something with keyholes, it's a couple different ways that you can do this. One is you could guess, just put 2 dots, put a screw in, and then just hope and pray you're getting it in the right spot. Now with 4, it's a little bit more difficult, but I think I can get away with just doing 2. The reason is I don't put the legacy remote on this because the charger doesn't work. Like a lot of these old ones, the self-charger broke a long time ago. So I'm just gonna put 2 screws at the top, and that should hold it nicely in place because they're not gonna put any more weight on it. So to do this, a little cheat code here, and a lot of people have probably already done this, but for those of you that are new to it, what we're gonna do is take some painter's tape here. You can just use a masking tape. And we're gonna place this over, of course it helps if you cut it that's long enough to get all the way across. So we're gonna place this right over the keyholes, like that. And when you push down, you can kind of see where they are. And what we're gonna do is just poke a little hole. I'm gonna poke it right in the center of where the screw is gonna go in. Like that. We can take that off. Now, what height do I want that at? I'm probably gonna do it a little low. I'm thinking maybe right here. Right there. And then what I can do is take my Sharpie. I can just put a little dot there. And then where my other one is, I can put a dot, pull that off, and then I know exactly where I need to screw those 2 holes. And then I can put the screws in, and then it should line up perfectly. Holes are drilled. Now, just take screw it in. Obviously it's going to be sticking out a little bit, so you can fit it into that keyhole like that. But one thing to keep in mind is whenever you're picking the screw that you want to use, a lot of people just pick whatever they have laying around the house. This is a 1 3/8 inch screw going into 3/4 inch plywood. So if I put this in here, even if I keep it out a little bit, it's going to be sticking out the back, and that's going to be something that's just going to slice you at some point. You're going to be working back there, you're going to cut yourself, bump your head on it. I had this issue with a lot of screws I've used on my layout because I was lazy at the time. So go out and buy some 3/4 inch screws. So that way, even if you screw these all the way into the plywood, it's not going to come out the back, or just a little bit. And we're just going to be just putting these barely into this, just enough to hold that base. So we could turn it with a screwdriver, or I'm going to use my fancy DeWalt, just like that. And line up 1, line up 2. There we go. And we are good to go. On to the next one. 4 holes drilled for the TIU. It's gonna go right like that. So I'm gonna use the zip ties, and I don't have zip ties that are long enough to go all the way through and around, so we're gonna double them up. So to do that, you just take one zip tie to another. There you go, locked in place. Don't need to go more than that. We'll send this through here. And then I'm gonna grab it from the back and bring it around. Now I've got a beam here as well. That's probably gonna make this too, it's probably not gonna work. I'm probably gonna have to use another zip tie, because I'm actually going around a 2x4 in the back there. So that's okay. What we can do, all right. So now we can put this guy here. And then what we'll do is the same thing for the bottom one. So this is in, before I do the Wi-Fi, I'm trying to get these wires connected. So moved the transformer a little bit to one side, facing towards the track. So it's kind of lined up for when we can adjust that later on. Got some extra green bus wire that we're gonna be using here. So the green bus wire is going to be from the transformer to the TIU. And then we're going to be running, I'm gonna see if I have any gray wire left, or we'll just use red from the TIU to the track. So we're gonna run it through the holes that I've drilled. I've drilled 2 holes next to each input. On the back side of this, I've labeled it with Sharpie, T1 in, positive, negative, T2 in, positive, negative, T2 out, positive, negative, T1 out, positive, negative. So once we've got them through here, go ahead and use my wire strippers. And so we were wiring up the in ports, so I'm just taking, again, these little guys, and I'm gonna, these are a little small for the gauge wire that I'm using, but they'll get the job done. So now we've got the in, we're all done. So these come from our transformer. These come from the daisy chained ground in the back. If we swing over to the outside, I've got my ground leads coming through here. So we're just gonna, all right, so we have the fixed outs are wired in now. And I've also added the WIU down below here. And if I kind of just pan this down, what I did was I mounted this down low, so then these wires, the power wire and the TIU wire, just come down and they just go right underneath that plywood. And then I've got it cable tied and zip tied, the TIU wire. So this one then just comes right back up and it's cable tied in here, so it holds it nice and snug into the TIU. Power wires then goes up and gets plugged into the surge protector in the back. So that is nice and clean. All right, here's a view behind the board now, so you can kind of see what's going on back here. Now, it doesn't look all perfectly clean and whatnot, but it's certainly better than it was, and that's really the key here. So what do we have going on? So I've got the surge protectors mounted here, and in that I've got the power for the legacy command base. I've got this small extension cord, which just runs over to power the turntable, so there's not a huge load on that. We've got the plug for the transformer, and we've got the plug here for the Z1000. So there's a pretty big load on this one circuit, but I've never had an issue with it. So that's mounted here. I've got the surge protector. You know, it's out a little bit so you can see it and easily reach around, turn it on and off. Here are the zip ties for the TIU, and then here are our wires. If you move these, you can see wires in, positive, negative, out, positive, negative over there. Here's my grounds, so they come in from the transformer and then split and come down to the end of the TIU, come out of the TIU over on this side and up to the track. If we pan back, I've cable tied my wires up high, get them up out of the way so it's easy to move around underneath the layout here without pulling wires out. I have some young kids that every once in a while like to get into some mischief under here, so I'm glad that I've got those wires up and out of the way. So that gives you a little view of what it's like back here. All right, and we are done for today. So we've got everything mounted here. Wires are nice and tight in behind the back. If we come up and look where the transformer is, pretty cleared off. Those wires are still a mess. We'll work on those. I've got the Z1000 brick up here, and then you know, the transformers here. I've got some extra slack on those wires so we can reuse them in time. Let's give it the old test here. So we'll fire it up, and I grab my legacy remote. We've got the Polar Express on the inner loop, so we'll turn on the inner loop here. Awesome. So that's working. course, my SW1's firing up automatically down there, so we're still having some issues with the DCS. And then if we go to the inner loop, we've got the GS4. And that's getting a signal too, which is great.